Welcome into KPIsoccer.com. My name is Scott, one of its co-creators. We've decided to place the last of our intro videos first to show you the payoff for all of your stats keepers' efforts in capturing the actions on the field. These are in the form of colorful charts, graphs, and tables that your coaches and trainers will come to value in their ultimate goal of quality player development. This is really where the rubber meets the road. KPI Soccer is a quantitative player assessment platform that includes an innovative app, making it possible to deliver a robust array of key performance indicators of soccer players in real time. So how it works is stats keepers score matches by tagging player actions in attacking and defending phases of play. Then we compile and analyze KPIs for all of your individual players and for the team. Then we deliver real-time performance results to coaches and to family members visualized in colorful charts, graphs, and tables. So take a look at the game summary on the monitor, which is for a girls' youth soccer club team, U14, and it was recently played. I scored this match myself. This is a view of a match from 35,000 feet. So many coaches and trainers are coming around to the conclusion that youth soccer should be less about the scoreline and more about how the game was actually played. In other words, what actions are our players taking on the field to support our philosophy or style of play? And what better way to assess their play than by using their actual performance facts, by taking a look at all of their actions on the ball in the attacking and defending phases of play. For me, it's time we strive to live up to the claim that many of us make, which is the key to individual player development must coexist with playing as a team, where passing and sharing the ball is the key to both. But that's just me. Johan Cruyff probably said it best by saying quality without results is pointless, but results without quality is boring. So we want our kids playing attractive soccer, scoring soccer, attacking soccer, but we want to understand how they're playing the game so we can inform training better in the future. So here's the game summary for this game. Obviously, we provide the score, the shots on goal, the shots off target, corner kicks, offsides, fouls, cards, and the possession in the form of minutes and percentage of possession. These are important. This game was fairly evenly played, as you can see. In youth soccer, there's a lot of turnovers. And as our kids learn and get more proficient on the ball, those numbers should go down. Your possession number should go up, but your turnover number should go down. So the attacking KPIs will tell us how many passes we attempted and how many we completed and what the percentage was. Imagine when we have enough data from enough teams, we'll be able to establish some guidelines or standards as far as how many passes per minute a purposely passing team should be making. These are the types of insights that KPI Soccer was intended to provide. So for this last game, the success rate was, well, we completed 171 of 252 passes for just under 68%, meaning our passes failed 32% of the time. On our turnovers on the first touch, at 31 for the game, I view that as high. As we get more data from more game lines, we'll be able to figure out where that is in the mix. But just intuitively, looking at 18%, almost 1 of every 5 first touches on the ball resulting in a turnover seems high to me. We're tracking dribbles in the aggregate, so we effectively and successfully dribbled 25 of 46 opponents for a little over half of our dribble percentage, which I guess isn't bad. But again, the more data you have to look at over a longer period of time, the better sense you'll have for whether that's really good or not so good. We're tracking disruptions on the ball. We're tracking interceptions on the ball and block shots on the ball in defending phases of play. So that's the game summary table. It's the view from 35,000 feet. The next table we'll look at, next two tables, are attacking and defending tables. And those numbers roll up into this game summary table that you're looking at now. So let me reduce this a little bit. The attacking table was designed to provide many measurements for each player on the field. So what we have is the player's name, number, name, and position played. In some cases, some kids will be playing multiple positions throughout the game. Their actual playing time on the field, their actual time on the ball, and then we have columns summarizing their passing activity, their receiving activity, their first touch losses, and their dribbling activity. Okay, so let's quickly just go into the passing activity. Let's focus on number 22. She attempted 36 passes and completed 27 of those passes for a 75% pass completion rate. We're tracking the turnovers in the third of the field they occurred, and the videos that you'll watch behind this one will show you how to score those actions in real time. But for player number 22, who happens to be a left fullback, she turned the ball over in the middle third 6 times on the pass, and she turned it over 3 times in the attacking third on the pass. And it gives her both her raw numbers and her percentage of turnovers in each third of the field. All right, let's go down to a player that wasn't as successful on the pass. Player number 14 completed 3 of 5 passes for 60%. She played 2 defending roles and 1 attacking role, and she turned the ball over in the midfield once. One of her 2 turnovers were in the middle third, and one was in the attacking third. So we have that summary of her passing activity. She played 48 minutes, so it appears like she was somewhat quiet in the attacking and the passing phase of play, or passing metric. On the receiving end of the ball, this is where we target players. These are players targeted with passes. So let's go back up to number 22 to explain how this works. Number 22 was the target of passes 15 times. Only 2 of those passes failed to reach her. And on 1 occasion, she had a first touch turnover, and that occurred in the defending part of the field. Jumping down to this player, number 9, who played attacking roles, a left forward and a right forward position. She was the target of 40 passes. However, 12 failed to reach her. In fact, 30% of the passes that were played into this player failed to reach her. And on 6 occasions, she lost the ball on the first touch. The good news is she was in the attacking third on each turnover that she committed. So you can see that tracking intended receivers of the ball is very important, because we've modeled our whole system on an attempted action and its outcome, and whether that outcome was either a success or failure. Let's move to dribbling really quickly. So player number 22, who was our left fullback, attempted 1 dribble and was unsuccessful. So she turned the ball over 100% of the time. She wasn't dribbling a lot, being a defender. She chose not to, but she turned it over in the defensive third of the field. Here's some players that are a little more dribble-minded. Number 15 attempted 13 dribbles. She succeeded 9 times by beating her opponent 9 times on the dribble for a 69% success rate, which is pretty good. And she turned the ball over 4 times. All 4 of her turnovers occurred in the middle third of the field. So that's kind of how the data lines read for each player on the field. And then we have the average and team totals at the bottom. So let's go through them real quickly. The average player played 60 minutes. These are 70-minute games at U14 in our area. The average time on the ball was 1 minute 32 seconds. The average passing attempt was 19. The average completion rate was 68%. So they completed 13 of 19 passes on average. And here are their turnovers by third of the field. On the receiving, your average player was the target of a pass 19 times, and 5 of those 19 failed to reach her. Almost a little over a quarter of those passes failed to reach the intended target. On the first touch losses, the average player committed 2.4 for 17%. I would say 17% of first touch losses is on the high side. The sooner you can get that down into single digits in percentage terms, the better. So turning almost 1 in 5 receptions over on the first touch needs a lot of work as far as I'm concerned for our team. And then the dribble totals. Attempted 46 dribbles and were successful 25 times for a just over 50% success rate. In the future, we're going to be able to have our totals and average line go to the midsection of any metrics you want to compare it to. For example, for passing percentage, you'll click on the passing percentage indexer, and it'll move these two lines to the middle of our highest to our lowest pass completion percent by player. So you'll be able to look who's above the line and who's below the line. It will help you more quickly make sense of all the data that's presented in these tables. And then you can return it to its original order, and then you can do the same for receiving, the same for first touch losses, and the same for dribbling. So you'll be able to look at who's above and below the line quickly in a table format. One key insight that we discovered after looking at the data in this table was that our forwards, number 9 and number 11, were forcing their turns up the field, resulting in a high number of turnovers. We'd rather have them play the way they face and not turn every ball, perhaps dropping the ball back into the midfield and then getting the ball back in space, which will allow all 3 of our lines to move up the field together. So that's something we learned from just looking at the data that heretofore was not available. And it gave us an insight that, hey, forwards, we don't need to turn every ball and run up the field 100 miles an hour directly to goal. We need to play it wide. We need to find spaces back in the center and then move it up where players can then get into position to receive the ball in spaces. And then, obviously, the whole point is to generate great scoring opportunities. So in the future, we're going to add this feature so you can index the percentages of each player's production and then move these average and team total lines into the middle of each metric so you can see who's above and below the line. That is the attacking tab, and that shows quite a bit of data summarized in one table. We're going to move on to the defending table, which is set up much like the attacking table, except that now we're tracking tackles. And again, you're attempting tackles and you either succeed or fail, and we have a percentage of success rate here. Disruptions and interceptions and blocked shots are only positive actions. So we're only accumulating data for these in a positive sense. In other words, when you disrupt the opponent on the ball somehow or some way, you're going to get credit for that as a player. When you intercept, obviously you've gotten credit because you've won the ball back and it's our possession, we're attacking. And then blocking shots is really important. When all else fails, tackles, disruptions, and interceptions, we want these our players blocking shots so nothing can approach our net. So again, we have our players listed by number and name and the positions in which they played, their time on the pitch, and the attempted tackles. As a team, we attempted 53 tackles. We were successful 21 times for a 40% positive tackling rate. So Obviously, we want to be at least 50-50 when we're challenging for balls on the tackle. We want to win it 50% of the time. And the higher we run those numbers up, the better the team's performing on defensively. Same with disruptions. Um, so let me back up. Players should be trying to win the ball back using our tactics of pressure, cover, and balance. If we're pressuring the ball effectively, we'll win more tackles than we forfeit. And we should have as many disruptions on the ball as possible. If the team are working hard, there will be many disruptions of the ball where players are not necessarily winning the ball, but throwing the opponents off balance, allowing cover and balance teammates to tackle and intercept the ball. So by keeping track of these types of metrics, we now have a great way to complement those players who are really working hard to win the ball back in the defensive phase of play. And now we can reward anyone in any position on the field based on their performance outputs. So if we're looking at disruptions, number 22 disrupted 15 times, which happened to be 23% of our team's total. The more disruptions, the more turnovers we're going to cause, and the less time they're going to have the ball. We want our players team disrupting all over the field, and that's kind of the current state of the game. If you're playing overload soccer and trying to build up numerical advantages on the attack, then when you lose the ball, you should quickly try and win it back, because the logic is you've committed players to that area and you have a numerical advantage in which to win the ball back. So these are our disruptions. You can see players that are not disrupting that much. Perhaps they need to be working a lot more in their defensive tactics. And obviously we can complement those that are disrupting many times. Interceptions often come not simply by picking a ball off from the opponent, but picking up a loose ball caused by a disruption. So interceptions are a combination of picking the ball off cleanly that you intercepted from an opponent, and by picking up a loose ball that was the result of your teammate disrupting that opponent. So interceptions, obviously your backs are going to generate quite a bit of them. Your midfielders are going to generate quite a bit of them. And your forwards aren't going to create as many, but they should be certainly disrupting the ball more, allowing your midfielders to pick up those interceptions as they disrupt. So in the aggregate, we did 66 disruptions. I know there are games where we've had higher numbers of disruptions, and that's a good thing. And we've intercepted the ball 103 times. In this game, we did not block the shot. We didn't block any shots. But to be fair, their shots on goal were 2. They did have 6 shots off target. So we had 8 opportunities to block shots, and we didn't block any of them. So that's how you can look at this data as they come in. Really focusing on each individual player and what each individual player needs to be working on in training, and getting those messages to those individual players. The better they become at the good things they're doing, and the better they become in improving their deficiencies, the more complete player we're turning out, and that's the whole goal. We want each kid to improve to the best of his or her ability, and by tracking these factual metrics, we now have a basis by which to do that. Talking about future functionality, we'll be able to click on players and bring up her data line from each game in the season. So we'll be able to see her progressions line for line from one game to the next, and for her entire average over a season. We'll be able to do that for every player on the field, and all the rest of the charts that you'll be seeing that we designed can also be looked at the individual player level. But for now, we're talking about the table data and how they roll up into the team totals and the team averages. Okay, those are the tables. So we have a game summary table, an attacking table. Attacking is your passing, your first touches, your dribbling. Shots we'll cover in a different table. Their playing time, And that's it for the attacking table. The defending table, we're covering tackles, disruptions, interceptions, and block shots. Let's go to the actions charts. So now we're into getting visual glimpses of our players' performance on the field. This is a total actions chart of all the actions taken by each player on the field, and it shows their positive actions next to their negative actions. So for number 5, she completed 29 positive actions on the field and had 6 negative or minus actions on the field. So this is your at a glimpse look at each player on the field and how they stack up relative to each other. Again, players in the center of the field are probably going to see the ball more than wider players, and we'll have to take that into consideration as we move forward and determine guidance and guidelines for teams when we generate enough data. So let me demonstrate the interactivity of this chart. Right now the bars are in the grouped format. We're going to stack them. So that's how they look when they're stacked, and you can look down the chart just to see visually how your players are comparing to one another. I'm going to group them because the data labels are included, and also we can remove the negative actions and just look at the positive actions that the player took on the field. And conversely, we can look at just their negative actions on the field if we want to just have a quick look at how our players compare in terms of negative actions on the field. There's some players with many more negative actions on the field than other players. Again, one of the main themes of developing this app was taking individual responsibility for the ball. And we can't know what we don't track. And finally, by tracking information and metrics such as these, we're going to know these results, and we'll be able to use that data and compare them game over game, player over player, team average over team average as the game progresses. So let's return this chart to its original format, which is showing positive and negative actions by each player on the field. We can see number 15 was extremely positive with 92 actions, and just, a little over maybe 25% of the time she was negative on her actions. And you can go down your list and look at each player's. That's the total actions chart. It gives you a quick snapshot of each player's performance on the field. Let's go into the passes chart. This is a bar chart that shows quality of passes for each player and their completion percentages. This is a very unique chart. So this happens to be in alphabetical order, and we don't know the, yes we do. We know the last initial of the last name. But anyway, the way this chart is configured is we have a 0 y-axis. The x-axis is the passing and the type of pass. And let's look at the top player, number 5. She completed 9 first-line passes. She failed to complete 2 first-line passes. And she failed to complete 1 second-line pass. Skipping down to player number 15. She completed 26 first-line passes, probably 1 third-line pass, and 1 lofted air pass. Her incomplete passes are on the left side of the 0 axis, and she had 8 incomplete first-line passes, probably 1 third-line pass, and probably 1 lofted air pass incomplete. So what these bars do is they proportionally break each color into the length of the number of passes, of quality of passes on the bar. For example, 12 first-line passes for number 26, 1 third-line pass, you can see it's a small segment of yellow, 2 second-line passes, it's twice the size of the first of the second line slice, and she completed 1 lofted air pass. On her incomplete passes, she incomplete passed 11 times, 9 of which were first line, 2 of which were third line. This is good. She's looking to complete third line passes, and those are the passes that do the most damage to the opposition. So we want her looking for those passes. So overall, you can look at a glimpse who's more in the negative, who's, more than 40% negative, and who's, for example, greater than 60% positive. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 players that are above 60% passing proficiency, which is pretty good. Again, once we have data from other games to look and measure against one another and to compare, we'll have a better sense of their productivity in passing as we go. So that is the passes chart. This is called a Likert bar chart, and it's highly visual because it gives colorful depictions of your quality of passes and the frequency of those passes. So you'll know most of our passes are first line passes, which is fine, but the more second and third line passes we're completing, probably the more attacking we're doing, and probably the more quality shots we're getting as well. The final chart is a lines chart, and I want to explain how this one works as well. It's interactive, much like the actions chart was, and this is a time series chart. So these games are 70 plus minutes. This represents injury time, broken down into 5-minute intervals of the game. So here is the so this is positive actions per minute by line, not really by position, by line. And by line we mean by defenders in the aggregate, by midfielders in the aggregate, and by forwards in the aggregate. So we can see in the first 5 minutes our defenders had 15 positive actions, as did our midfielders, and our attackers had 12. From 6 to 10 minutes, our defenders had 14 positive actions. Now our midfielders have 21 positive actions, and our forwards have 4. Looks like we're playing the ball more so through the midfield in that chunk of time. In 11 to 15 minutes, it looks like we tailed off and the other team has the ball a lot, because we're showing 9 defensive positive actions, 11 positive actions by our midfielders, and only 5 positive actions by our attackers. So it looks like in that 5 minutes we lost control of the game. But in the 16 to 20 minute mark, it looks like we started to establish a little more will and control of the game. Now our defenders had 11 positive actions, our midfielders had 25 positive actions, and our forwards had 13. So it looks like we're generating a lot more possession and a lot more positivity in the attacking third. So you can see, just by looking at this grouped 3-bar format, that we were more productive, probably, at least on our midfield line, in the second half than we were in the first half. Now, in addition to the grouped bars that are defender, midfield, attacker, side by side, we can stack them, and perhaps that's an easier way to look at this. So now we have 15 positive defending actions in the first 5 minutes, 15 positive midfield actions in the second and in the first 5 minutes, and 12 positive actions by our forwards in the first 5 minutes. So looking at this, just by moving the bars from a grouped format to a stack format, we can see that our midfielders indeed started to take control of this game and generated many more positive actions in the second half of the game as they did in the first. In addition to grouping and stacking this chart, we can eliminate certain lines. So now we're just showing our forwards 12, 4 positive actions, and the next in 11 to 15 minutes there were 5 positive actions. In 16 to 20 minutes there were 13, and so on. The forwards really got on track here. In the 46 to 50 minute mark where they did 14 positive actions. That was the height of the game. And so on and so forth. I believe we scored our goal in the second half of this game and really started to take control of this game. So that's how you can eliminate certain lines from the bar, from the graph, and add lines to the graph as well. So this is a time series chart. We're going to do a whole bunch more of this, which includes negative actions on the ball. So we'll be able to go from 0 to 70 minutes with a chart that'll look something like a stock market chart where it goes up and down, but hopefully there'll be many more positive actions on the ball than negative, and so that jagged line will be ever increasing on the y-axis. More on that later. So I think at this point you get a sense for the type of data we can pull out once we tap it in there from our user interfaces, which really tells the story of how games are being played. By looking closely at the data at the end of the match, we'll know exactly how the game was played. Did we try and build from the back and through our midfielders to get into the attacking third? Or was the ball being kicked up the field as directly as possible with our forwards running onto it? And these answers will be easily determined just at a quick glance and look at the data, that if you're proficient and accumulating enough actions for each player on the field, by scoring them properly, it will be reflected in the data. That pretty much concludes the overview. This is by no means an exhaustive chart. When we put this thing into beta, which will be next week, we will be asking our 25 coaches and trainers who have elected to beta test our platform for their input and to see what types of data they would like to see in the form of charts, graphs, and tables. We have a lot of ideas. Again, we're only showing you 5 in this video, and these are the 5 we've created thus far, only because we have many more to complete. There's 10 on the drawing board. For example, we have a passing sequences chart, which will graph how many 2-pass sequences we completed the game, how many 3-pass sequences we completed in the game before committing a turnover, how many 4, 5, 6, 7, 10, 15, 20 passing sequences we were able to execute on the field without turning the ball over. We'll be able to throw those into charts, graphs, and tables. We'll have scatter charts where we can pick a player, for example, number 13, and show from her right fullback position how many passes she attempted, into which positions she attempted them, and her success and failure rate as a scatter chart. In this particular game, we played a 4-4-2. So we'll show the other 10 players who number 13 passed to in a scatter chart and be able to visually see who she's passing the ball to. Again, the idea is to gain insight from the performance facts of your player, taking them back to training, closing the feedback loophole, and giving those players exactly what they need to be working on in training. And you want to do it at the individual level. You want to do it in the group level, as far as defenders, midfielders, forwards. You want to do it in the thirds level, attacking, midfield, defending third, and to be working on each phase and each part of the field and getting the players up 10 percentage points in the aggregate on their, for example, total actions chart. If we can move everybody up 10 percentage points and convert 10% of these negative actions to positive actions, we're going to have better outcomes in each game. And that's where the data will drive us. I invite you to look at the next 3 videos, which show you how to score the games in real time. Thanks for watching.